The Alyeska Pipeline Service Company was formed by BP, Arco, Exxon, Mobil, Amerada, Hess, Phillips, and Union. The purpose of Alyeska was to coordinate the movement of crude oil, first by pipeline north to south across Alaska, and second by tanker to the west coast of the U.S. This began around 1973. The economic impact of Alyeska was enormous. Annually, every Alaskan received a dividend check of about $1,000. Requirements from Congress went unmet by Alyeska. Storage tanks for toxic sludge were not built. Carbon steel was used in place of stainless steel, and these cheaper pipes sprang many leaks. Alyeska also used single-hold rather than double-hold tankers. Alyeska was missing much of the emergency cleanup equipment it was supposed to have on hand. The Exxon Valdez began its voyage on the 23rd of March, 1989, carrying over 50 million gallons of oil. The crew was exhausted and overworked. The Exxon Valdez ran aground just after midnight on the 24th of March, when it failed to maneuver around a reef while traveling through ice. An estimated 25 million gallons of oil escaped into the Prince William Sound. It took 18 hours for Alyeska to respond to the spill, and when they did, it was with nowhere near the needed equipment. Alyeska refused help from volunteering fishermen. After 72 hours, Alyeska was supposed to have removed 4 million gallons of oil, but had only removed 130,000. After 15 days, the oil slick covered 18 square miles. Storms came and mixed the oil and water into a foam that could not be burned or skimmed. 1,300 miles of shoreline were contaminated. Exxon spent $2 billion on the cleanup effort over the next 4 years, operating only during the summer. Millions of animals and billions of fish eggs were killed by the oil. In 1990, Exxon was found guilty of 2 felony charges and 3 misdemeanors. Exxon paid fines equivalent to $1 billion to the federal government and the state of Alaska. Exxon also paid $5 billion in damages to Alaskan citizens.
Every company has a large responsibility to ensure that their product and manufacturing process pose no threat to the safety of the consumers as well as to the general public and environment. An oil spill poses obvious threat to the safety of the public and even more so to the environment. The cause of the spill was due to human error in sailing the tanker. The crew was overworked and exhausted, so a large part of the fault will come down to the management of the crew. Although plans were in place to deal with the spill, these plans fell short of expectations and consequences of the spill were worse than expected. The oil spill contaminated 1,300 miles of shoreline and were estimated to directly have caused the deaths of 250,000 seabirds, 250 bald eagles, 2,800 otters, 300 seals, 22 killer whales, and countless salmon, eggs, and herring.
As far as the accountability to clients, it should be the responsibility of companies to their clients to make sure that the production of their products is both ethical and safe. Now, in this case, who are the clients? That would include anyone who's buying oil or oil-based products. Here, there was a conflict of interest. The dividend that was received by the Alaska populace created a situation where many of the clients, particularly the ones who were most involved in the situation, were willing to ignore the presence of problems for a monetary gain. Therefore, there was very little accountability. The entire incident is a failure to the clients. Specifically, these failures looked as follows. There was a severe lack of preparation for a potential spill by Alyeska. Warnings came from several sources, including the port commander, an inventory that was done in 1988, radar equipment, and as well as many of the engineers on site, notably Jerry Neville. The inventory in 1988 revealed that there was 15% of boom, that's a floating fence, available to Alyeska, as well as only 8 out of 10 of the barricades, and half of the emergency lights. that were supposed to be presents, the other half of which were being used for a winter carnival in Valdez. In addition to this, only half of the length of the 6-inch hose that would have been used to pump oil out of the sea was present. To combat any further failures of companies in these areas, recommendations would include that companies should always be aware of the capabilities of the equipment that they have on hand. In addition, public safety reports should be made available to the public so that the public can actually maintain the accountability of these companies who are operating at the risk of the environment. Companies should also maintain the standards that they set for themselves.
Issues with informed consent contributed to the oil spill, and these included unfulfilled congressional requirements, safety guidelines, and conflicts of interest. There was a conflict of interest because the Alaskans let the pipeline service fail to meet requirements, most likely because they received dividend checks from the pipeline. The Alyeska pipeline failed to meet the following congressional requirements: 14 additional storage tanks, an incinerator, stainless steel vapor recovery system, double-hulled tankers, and untreated ballast water. The pipeline had major issues with safety guidelines because they failed to prepare for emergencies, and this included a lack of oil spill drills, a lack of emergency lights, missing hose and boom, and proper rest time for ship workers before departure.
Now, regards to data integrity / representation, we see that several things have already been stated that play into this. We have requirements for the drilling site and oil transportation that were unfulfilled during their agreement. And another thing with cleanup preparedness, they did not have a plan that was set in place to remove such a spill from the water. And half of the required machines and equipment were on site and ready to go. 3,700 feet of the boom, which is only 15% of what was required to be on site, was present at the time.
In addition to all of this information, we were able also to interview a fisherman, my dad, Daniel Goodson, who was present in 1990 salmon fishing off of the coast of Kodiak Island for that summer. Now, as you can see on the map, there was not a lot of oil present, and there wasn't much that was available to be seen as far as damages. It was, in fact, according to some of the fishermen that my dad talked to, a fairly good year. Now, it was just for the one summer my dad was a lowly fisherman, a grunt he described himself as. But after many lawsuits that were brought up because of this incident that in fact have defined Alaskan politics for decades afterwards, we did eventually end up with about $15,000 in compensation for the event.